to think that they would even give me this opportunity just shows how poor the booking was.
Felt odd. It felt everything that the show was great for was being changed. And we all were sort of looking at each other, rolling our eyes, going, what the hell is happening?
You were one of those kind of lifer guys. Like, you showed up kind of with Grillo and Stuttering John. I think Stuttering John was there before you got there. But just talk about how you ended up in the Howard Stern universe. It was an internship, right? Or is that...
Yeah. I started as an intern. I was 20 years old going into my junior year of college. And it's interesting because I knew of Howard, wasn't really a fan because I didn't really listen to talk radio at that point. 20 years old, I was probably just listening to like some Headbangers music in my car whenever I was in it. So I wasn't really listening to that kind of entertainment. I was going to college at Long Island University, CW Post, and I worked at the radio station, the college radio station, with this kid, Mike Navarro, who was interning on the show. He was Stuttering John's best friend. He was also interning at Howard with John, and he was graduating and leaving his internship. And I knew I was going to need one, so I asked Mike if he can set me up with an interview. And that's really how it all started, from knowing Mike Navarro from going to college.
And back then, it seemed like at Howard, if you hung on and just kind of did a good job, you got a job, right? And that's pretty much what happened, right?
Yeah, that's basically what happens. If you're good at your job or good enough at your job, and you're willing to work for nothing, which I was, which I worked for a little over 2 years for free. So for zero money, nothing, zero. So if you're willing to work for that kind of pay, you can go far in this industry. So I was able to, stay there. I showed up every morning because the biggest problem was prior to when I joined the show is they would get interns and you'd have to be in at 5 a.m. And for any, college age kid, being somewhere at 5 a.m. 5 days a week was not easy, and most interns didn't last. And so they really, I came in, was there every day at 5 a.m., did my job, did whatever I was asked to do, stayed until, 1, 2 o'clock, and then would go to college after that. But yeah, that was really, if you could just show up and be on time, that was considered the best you can do.
But you started as an intern, right? Just give me how that process works. I mean, I'm sure there's so many people that want.
All right, it's really kind of an interesting story. If I go on a little too long, cut me off. But I had a decision when I was in. I went to Catholic school. My parents asked me, if you want to go to Catholic high school, you can. If you don't, you can go to public. And I knew I would never survive. Not survive physically. I would be cutting class, and I knew I needed an education. So I chose Catholic school. I wrestled in high school 4 years, and
all right, you've already gone too long. I'm just kidding.
my father, I wrestled, and my parents never said I didn't go to college. So I wound up my senior year. My father goes, if you want to go to college, I'll pay for it. So I got recruited by Hunter College, which is on Madison Avenue and 68th Street. No, I was on Lexington 68th, and I listened to Howard every day on my headphones. And one day I heard him give out the address. It said 600 Madison. I'm like, that's down the block. I went, cut class, went down, went to this about 600 Madison, went up to the 4th floor, and now I'm standing in the lobby of K-Rock. And I'm like, and I remember there's the receptionist and there was the door, and there was this really ugly green plant on the other side of the door. And all I could think about was, I have to get past that plant. And after that, I was determined. I'm relentless. When I want something, I'm going to get it. And I sent in a resume. I didn't hear back. Then I hand wrote a really pathetic resume, like a letter to Gary, and ripped it out of my spiral notebook. Had phrase on it. I stuffed it into an envelope. Gary called me back.
Didn't they read that they read that one on the air, I think, too, right? It had grammatical errors left and right, and I think that was part of the charm.
I played the pathetic fucking little, please help me. I need help.
But so was it an internship or was it more of a job?
Yeah, you understand, they only gave internships to seniors. because you were about to graduate, and they wouldn't give me credits. So I went to the head of the communications department, told him he thought they were this. He dragged me down to the interim office and was like, "You give this kid credit. So what? He's a freshman." And so I was the only freshman in Hunter College history to ever get a credit to do an internship.
That's pretty awesome. I know Hunter College was made fun of a lot too. So what is your first couple weeks? I know the potato became the big thing. Get Howard's potato. Get it right. And
I didn't get that internship right away, but Gary really liked me. But because I lived in Brooklyn and my commute was so far, he said that I think you're great, but it's been my experience that if you are in Brooklyn, it's hard for you to get here at 5 o'clock and people don't show up. So he went with a girl that was at NYU, but he did give me a project. There was a bunch of show tapes that weren't logged. So I didn't get but I came in and I logged a bunch of old shows, but I didn't have to be there at 6 o'clock in the morning. But I showed up there at 6 o'clock in the morning because I'd be in the back office at a desk and I'd be listening to the show. And I remember okay, yeah, bring in Gilbert Gottfried now. And I stand up and I watch Gilbert Gottfried walk into the studio. And I was like, I can't believe I'm here. So I made the mistake of going through that box rather quick. But I was there 5 days a week because I was working for the Howard Stern show. When the box ran out, I did such a good job. They brought me over to promotions. And promotions, there was a big dry erase board calendar with all the events. I was like, Brillo. I did everything I could possibly do 5 days a week. And it got noticed. And when Robin didn't like her user intern anymore, they gave it to me.
Howard had you on a lot. You obviously gave him Celebrity Scoop, which is I think is why he was having you on, right? Isn't that basically how it kind of started?
So how it all started for me, I was working for this magazine called Stepping Out, and I had done a review of a Sam Kinison performance, and it was terrible. He collapsed on stage. He couldn't finish the performance, so it was a very negative review. And 6 months later, Sam was backstage at a New Jersey comedy club, and I was backstage just kind of hanging out. And his brother Bill goes, "Is your name Chauncey Hayden?" And I say, "Yeah." And he pulls the article that I had written 6 months earlier and says, "Sam, this is the guy." And they both attack me. And it turns to a big brawl in the green room. It made all the New York papers. And at that point, Stern had beginnings of that connection with Sam, and he was a part of the show. And he's like, "Did you read in the New York Post this morning? This guy, I think it's a guy, his name's Chauncey Hayden. He got into a fight with Sam." He goes, "This guy writes for a magazine called Stepping Out." He goes, "I've never heard of Stepping Out." He goes, "I think it's one of those penny savers." He goes, "Why is Sam, who's a famous comedian, getting into a fight with a guy named Chauncey from Stepping Out?" He goes, I gotta call Sam." And then I called in and said, "I'm the guy, I'm Chauncey." And Howard just went off. And it was so funny. He started making fun of me, making fun of the magazine, saying he was going to get me and Sam to make up on the air and fix this. Well, Sam never came on. But Howard had so much fun making fun of me and this idea that this kid with this giveaway free magazine was in all the New York papers. He's like, "You love this." He goes, "Come on, your name's in the New York Post. This is the greatest thing that's ever happened to you." And from that day on, it was just a marriage. It just went on for the next 20 years. And Howard just loved, he's brilliant at creating characters. And that day, he created the character of Chauncey from Stepping Out.
And there was a company called E! Entertainment Television that I didn't really know much about. They were just starting up. And I get a call back on the phone, not an email back, because there was no email, from a guy named Scott Einziger. And Scott and I, coincidentally, about 2 days after I graduated college, I worked freelance for a film production company that, long story short, Scott Einziger also worked for that same film director. So he was just going, "Oh my God," we compared stories from this crazy director and we hit it off. We got along and he said, "I have something evolving." And we met, and then sure enough, what was evolving was the Stern Show on E, and the rest is history. He hired me. I was associate producer. I worked my way up the food chain, and lasted there for 19 years.
Yeah. So when you get this call, like, what did you think you'd be doing, and then what did you end up? I know there's they did a lot of outside shoots. You did a lot of stuff with Hank the Angry Dwarf, which I want to ask you about. But what was it sort of billed as to you, and then kind of what did it turn into before you became the executive producer later on?
Yeah, well, when I started, when I started at the E Show, it was just myself, Mike Ganji, Robin Radzinski, and Scott Einziger, and then, of course, a few people on the tech crew, which is Scott Depace and we called Gump and an engineer, and that was it. It was like 7 or 8 of us, and so it was really doing everything and anything. Everything. I mean, Ganji and I would run out and we'd get props, we'd do shoots, we'd help produce studio segments, we'd help with bits, anything and everything. The rights and clearances, producing shows, everything. It was just so few of us, we did it all. It was such a great learning experience and such a great place to evolve.
Just how did you end up working for, it was E at the time, I think, back in 02, 03 is when you showed up, right? And how did you get the job?
So what happened was I was working for a production company back in the 90s, and I got in touch with Scott Einziger, who was the greatest EP going, and he was doing side projects to Howard. This was before E. And when Howard ran for governor and he did his New Year's Eve special and anything he wanted to videotape, he would get Scott, and Scott would hire my company, and we'd go out and we'd shoot whatever. And I got to, meet him and hang out with him and know him, and he's a great guy. And when the E Show started, I had another job, so I didn't get the job with E. I didn't even apply for it. I just, was doing something else. And when that job went away, I called Scott and I said, listen, do you mind, you got anything available? And he said, yeah, there's a camera guy, our camera guy's leaving. If you want, try out. And I tried out and I got it. So I started in 97, and I did 8 years with E, and I did 8 years with In Demand.
So you went from I guess the studio got bigger at K-Rock, and then obviously way bigger at Sirius. But
so what happened was at K-Rock, there was 2 studios. There was one K-Rock, which was a real small studio. The first 3 years at E was the original K-Rock, which was at 600 Madison. I was only there for like a month, maybe, not even, maybe like a week. And then that winter break happened, and then we came back and they built a new studio, which was the new K-Rock on 57th Street. And I started from day one there. And I did the whole time there. And then they had offsetting contracts between K-Rock, between radio and TV. So with 6 months left in his radio contract, and he was already going to Sirius, the E contract was up, and he wasn't bringing E to, satellites. So we parted ways in June. And then for 6 months, I kind of just freelanced around. And then, nice enough, he hired us back, and we all got our jobs back at Howard TV.
In 98, CBS merged with Infinity. Mel Karmas in the radio group, and I'm like, holy shit, Howard Stern is now part of our family. And I just would tell anyone that would listen, we got to do something, Howard, And I was in a position to make something happen, and it was great. We set up I pitched the idea, or the idea that we should do something with Howard, and that's when the Saturday night show came in. Which I said, let's not lie, let's call it what it is, the Howard Stern Radio Show, which is what it was, a TV show that was basically the radio show. Excuse me, and that's when I got to work with Howard. And I, as a longtime listener, I'm sure when you're in the Howard real world of working with him, whether you're his housekeeper or you bring him his coffee or whatever's in his world, if you're open to it, he'll pull you in. And I was absolutely open to it because I was such a fan, and that's how that happened. So there were days where then when Jackie left, I had been with the show long enough that Howard wanted me to sit in for some shows. which was amazing. That was another experience. And there were some days where I would be like, holy shit, I'm starting my day on the Howard Stern show on the air. And then I am in the afternoon, I was working with Letterman every day, but there were times when I was on the Letterman show just as myself. And I'm like, this is too weird. And I'm proud to say I stopped and appreciated those moments. I'm like, this is going to end. It's not always going to be great. It may not even end great, but it's an incredible moment in time. And it was more than a few occasions where that happened. So it was wonderful.
Yeah, so the Howard, I want to do Letterman kind of towards the end because that's obviously a big part, but I love the Howard Stern stuff. So how many meetings do you have with Howard a week? I mean, did he know you at this point, or did you become, because you're...
Oh, Howard was, it was incredible. We were partners in developing the show. We worked like closely together. So before we launched the CBS show, we spent a lot of time together. He's a great guy, like a great guy. And the off-the-air Howard was so, in some ways, so similar, but also different. Like really a business guy, and really, like Dave, completely micromanaging in a good way every aspect of the show. It wasn't just like stick a camera in here and put it on CBS. He had thoughts and opinions and strong feelings about a lot of things. So we were real partners on that. And going, when you're in the Howard world, there's weekly meetings, and unlike late night TV, the meetings, everyone is there. It's not just the writers. That's the great thing about Howard. A good idea is a good idea no matter where it came from. And with Howard, it was like we hit the ground running, super, super close, which allowed that ease on air, I think.
Back then really is what it shows. There's no reason I wasn't ready. I didn't know shit about radio. I wasn't really funny then. You know what I mean? Like, I was so new to everything. But again, here's the thing, right? Like, I was calling in with material. I was calling in with games, with questions on my own. Nobody asked me to do it. There was no payment for it. I used to have comics in Vegas that would be like, what the fuck are you doing? You're staying up till 6 a.m, calling some fucking show. The guy doesn't pay you. And I'm just like, how do you not get this? To me, it was a no-brainer. I'm like, because, Stuttering John would sit here and go, oh, he loves your calls. Or Benji would say, oh, he really likes your stuff. That's all I need to hear. That's it. I'm doing, that's my job now. And that's literally how I treated it. So when they brought me in, I mean, I'm almost positive, because I don't remember a lot about it, I'm almost positive it was terrible. I remember I sat in for the news once at K-Rock, and Gary, to my face, after the segment, I go, I'm just sitting there in my head going, I wonder how that went. And he goes, no, you did a great job. He goes, why don't you go hang out in the Yucko the Clown room, which was his way of saying the bomb room. And I'm like, I remember at one point Howard saying, and I don't know if it was this appearance, but I remember at one point saying, I like when you call in because I can hang up on you. He's like, can you go call in from the green room? So I probably was just shot out of a cannon, blah, 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 all over the place. I know it didn't go well.
Well, Howard's always a bit paranoid. Howard doesn't come out of his bunker until like 7 p.m. And, but look, Howard's not a bad guy. There's just been a lot of disparaging of Howard by ex-employees like Scott the engineer, not so much Grillo, but Stuttering John for sure. There's been a plethora of them who have really criticized the work environment at Sirius, notably Howard.
But there's a lot more that don't say anything, and it's sort of odd that, man, it could be, hey, I want to do something different. I don't need to talk about Howard, but there's a lot that don't want to talk about their time there. They just will not.
Yeah, there's a lot that don't, but still, you have people like Jackie Martley, Stuttering John, Steve Grillo. They're more than willing to talk about Howard. And Scott the engineer, Tim Sabian had a rough time there. His father was dying of cancer, and Howard said, oh, I think we should part ways. I mean, that's not great labor relations. To me, it's more emotional terrorism.
No, yeah, definitely. Now, this was way before you started checking into him, but I always wondered what happened with that marriage. Have you ever been able to figure out you know, they're doing this. Private Parts comes out. They're a happy couple, and a year and a half later, they're not.
He just wasn't happy. I mean, had grown apart, and it was time to move on. Howard was miserable, and like a lot of people in relationships, and he moved on and sort of found the love of his life. Although there's rumors about that marriage now that I've heard, no proof, so I don't want to get too into it. But you know, Howard Stern is a legend, and he really broke new barriers in the radio and communications business and set a huge template. So love him or hate him, you can't argue with his success.
And he's sort of kind of bulletproof because he did a lot of stuff in the 90s that you would get canceled for now, but it's seemingly, I mean, that tape's out there. You go to YouTube and watch it in blackface.
A lot of people on the show say the Me Too movement would have had a field day with Howard in his show. But look, somehow he remained bulletproof. You know, him and Ellen DeGeneres, they're the two big emotional terrorists now in the news. I mean, they've both been outed in the media. Ellen is stepping down. Let's see how much longer Howard. I mean, he signed a new contract, but let's see if he even fulfills the whole contract.
Won't name names, but everyone was just in disbelief and shaking their head after that summit. And when certain people came on board, it was just, what the heck?
Look,
it was bizarre. It was
the part about the summit that I liked was that Howard was pushing for more guests. And there was a real attitude towards guests before that. You know, Gary would never look for guests, and Howard would not want him to do that. And he used to always shock me. I'm like, hey, this guy's in town. Why aren't we getting them on? But Howard just had this different take. If they want to come on, they know where to find us. And so I enjoyed that part of that summit where Howard was saying, hey, we're going to go out and get the guests for once and have a actual booker for the show. But it was the rest of the stuff that was odd.
Hey, can I ask you one question?
Sure, you just did.
How about a second question? That'd be great. Hey, what do you think about Howard Stern on America's Got Talent? I haven't seen it.
You did these interviews for a long time. You were paid by Howard, right? And then in 2009.
Not necessarily. That's not true. I was paid by the radio station. Okay. I was paid by KLSX for producing the show, and that was part of my deal. I'd go out and do the celebrity interviews and produce his show. And I sort of cut a deal with that radio station. But Howard never paid me. I mean, the only time I really got paid from Howard was when he left for Sirius. And I got paid by Sirius Radio for a couple of years. But no, the radio station, Howard never dropped a dime on me.
But I kind of forgot that you were around during the Sirius days. So what happened at the end there? I mean, I remember things. You had a conversation with him on the air, right? And because he said you were too aggressive or something on the red carpet. Give me the end of the time with Howard.
Yeah, I mean, it goes deeper than that. It was 2006, and I was sort of getting sick of being in radio. And I wanted to produce reality TV shows and stuff like that. And I created a reality TV show. Following porn stars around for a day in the life of a porn star. And I pitched it to Howard TV and Doug Goodstein, and, Doug liked the idea, and we went back and forth for 6-7 months, tweaking it, me and my buddy. And at the end, and we had a meeting with my lawyer, conference call, where they were going to pay me a certain amount of money per episode. They're going to do 4 to 6 episodes. And then, it sort of just went down the tubes. We even shot one. I took a crew from Los Angeles, and they took a crew from New York. We did it in Vegas at the AVN Awards, called it A Day in the Life with, JD was dating her or something like that. We were following JD and some Courtney Combs. I don't know who the hell it was. But anyways, I brought a crew, and, I thought this was cool. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be a reality TV producer. It's going to, because I knew that was the beginning of it in 2006. And my buddy, who was the camera guy and my producer, had shot a lot of reality TV shows. So we were like, oh, this is going to be the start of us being producers and stuff. And then it just faded. They just sort of put it on the back burner. And it sort of really hurt my feelings, man, because I spent a lot of time on that. I mean, a lot of my time. And they said we had a deal. And then they turned around and did some of these episodes with Jessica Hahn and Bigfoot and Miss Black Howard Stern. I'm like, wow, they took my idea. Not that I have a, patent on it or whatever, but they took it and didn't even give me a penny. And, I'm left, with my dick in my hand, with these two shows where they could, Howard was making $100 million a year. He could have thrown me, hey, Gary, you know what? We're going to pass on this, but here's $5,000 for your time or whatever. I know you spent 6 months on it. Nothing. They didn't give me a penny. Nothing. And that's what really pissed me off. And that's when I was like, fuck these guys. They're fucking assholes. They took this idea. I've been a loyal foot soldier for 15 years, produced the show, getting up at 2:00 in the morning for 15 years, going out and doing these celebrity interviews while I was working. I'd go do the celebrity interviews, go home for a minute, and then come back, and go back to work at 2:00 in the morning. So I was working round the clock. And for them to do that, and Howard knew about it, because everything goes through Howard, by the way. Nothing does not go through Howard. He knows every fucking inch of his show or what's going on behind the scenes or whatever. So when they did that, it left a really sour taste in my mouth. I was like, fuck these guys. They just fucked me royally. And not only that, but they're fucking doing shows with other characters, and not even give me a dime, nothing. So I sort of self-sabotaged myself. Instead of saying, fuck you guys, I'm leaving, like I should have, I sort of just went out to an event and I created whole havoc because I intentionally did it. And I guess the public relations firm called Sirius and Scott Greenstein and said, hey, if you have this guy at any more events that we're doing or wherever on the red carpet, you'll never have another one of our celebrity guests on Sirius Radio. And that's how it went down. Then they said, hey, we got to let you go. There was a couple more instances before that, where I'd get pushed around and shit, but nothing really hardcore and heavy. One other instance, there's one online with this camera guy. But he created the havoc at the beginning and then, but listen, it is what it is. I mean, the bottom line is, I did great work for him. I got hassled. Nobody since has been able to do that shit out here. I mean, there's been no replacement, even though I think they've tried a couple times. So I'm not, I just felt bad that they fucked me. And that, and then that's when I went on, about a year later, I had a little podcast show that I went off and totally went off on Stern. And somebody, I guess he heard it and called me that morning, the Monday morning afterwards. And that's when we had the confrontation on the air.
Which is what he wanted, right? He loves that.
Oh, yeah. Basically, he called me. I had partied at a famous Mexican restaurant called Casa Vega in Studio City that, like, all the celebrities go to. I mean, major, from Marlon Brando to the Kardashians to I saw so many. Anyways, I used to live, like, 100 yards from there, and I'd get wasted. I mean, it was, like, the coolest place to go. So I partied that night, and then, like, 5:30 in the morning, I got a call, and I'm, like, hungover. Half asleep and hungover. And, Gary says, hey, Howard wants to talk to you, I'm like, all right, put him on. So that's basically what went down. And that's when he's like denying that he kept on saying, what's day in the life, Doug? And Doug came in and denied everything. And they denied everything. I mean, Howard acted like there was no day in the life. I go, you did day in the life. You did day in the life with Bigfoot. You did day in the life with Jessica Hahn, and he just totally blew me off. And that's when it was like, fuck you, man. I mean, listen, Howard put me on the map. I'm very thankful for my time with the show and my time at KLSX. And, I mean, I wouldn't be where I am today, which is not, it's cool. I mean, I'm digging what I'm doing. I mean, it's fun to be able to be independent, but I mean, he put me on the map and I'm very thankful for it. But I mean, I did give him a lot of good material. I laid my ass on the line for him many, many times. I was a fucking loyal foot soldier. And not only that, but producing the show too, and not fucking that up. It is what it is. I got nothing but respect for Howard, but I just don't like that he lied. He lied about what went down. He fucking knew about Day in the Life. He knew. Doug knew. If you listen to the phone call, in fact, maybe I'll play it this week, on my show. Doug even denied, what are you talking about? And I have 50 emails going back and forth with him and I, that I still have to this day.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I get the sense if you listen to the show now, the Stern Show, you wouldn't be on anyway. There's no fun being had in the last 8 or 9 years. So,
yeah, I people told me about the show, and that every now and then they listen to it. And he says he's completely changed. It's a completely different show and all that. I haven't heard the show since 2008. I haven't heard 1 second of it. But listen, it's cool. I still play his interviews. I still play my interviews. He's never gave me any shit about that. He's on the air every now and then, when he's making comments. So, which I really appreciate. That I've never had a call saying, hey, cease and desist or anything like that. So, as far as I'm concerned, he's the greatest broadcaster in radio history. He's the Michael Jordan of talk shows, no doubt. And, I have a lot of respect for him. It just the way it went down. And then, I just sort of felt like slapped in the face a little bit. Here I busted my ass for you so many years. When the FCC was coming down, I saved the Los Angeles license because they fined us $100,000. They flew in a lawyer from New York to show me how to cut the show up. And Howard would talk about it and rail on me on the show. And I was like, Baba Booey would call me. Hey, did you cut this out? I go, yeah, Gary. Call New York. Call corporate. I go, call corporate. They told me to cut it out. Okay, I just want to make sure, I go, yeah, call them up. So, I did a lot for that show. I laid my ass on the line, and it just felt like, it hurt me. It was like a slap in the face when they couldn't even throw me a bone, for trying to produce a reality TV show.
Even with that, again, I call Howard a hypocrite because, he left K-Rock to go to go to Sirius. Why is it okay for him to leave things, but it ain't okay for me?
It's very interesting. The more you talk about it, yeah, it's but no one can leave, which is crazy. But
well, yeah, you tell me one person, me, Jackie, Grillo, you tell me one person who's left and is actually on good terms now. We're all banned from the show. And even Gary, if Gary talks to me, he swears me to secrecy because he's afraid, because they're not even allowed to talk to us. Their staff now is not allowed to talk to us. And it's like, put it this way, they have a writer there now who I helped get the job. And he was a writer's assistant on The Tonight Show. And he was a friend of mine. And I helped get him the job there. And he came out to LA and he visited all his friends, and he would not even visit me because he was afraid to hang out with me, that he would, that he'd get in trouble with Howard.
Sounds like a concentration camp up there at Sirius. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, no, it's a real sick place. I've spoken to, I've done extensive, believe it or not, I have a lot of research on what goes on there now and what Howard has become, and I mentioned it in the book. It's sad in a way. He's become everything that he once goofed on. He's become everything that he once loathed. And it's just sad to see the transformation. Some of it is good because he's making up with all the people that, and there's another hypocrisy. He's making up with all these celebs like, Rosie O'Donnell and all these celebrities that he once trashed, Jennifer Aniston, but yet he won't make up with us. He won't make up with the Stuttering John and Jackie the Joke Mans who helped him in it's not like, look, he gave me my start. He certainly helped me, but nobody's going to tell me I didn't help him by, doing the interviews and being, the Esther and, doing stunts like stealing like Gary Puppet. I helped him with some damn good radio. There's a stutter. I wanted to give you one so you didn't think I was a fraud.
That was good.